I'm Margaret, 63. 3 days ago at Riverside Falls, my daughter and her husband dragged me toward the cliff edge to stage an accident and steal my savings. Before they could shove me, I angled myself into the water and vanished in the current. What I heard while they thought I was dead will haunt me forever. For 60 years, I lived quietly in my quiet cottage. Robert had been gone 3 years, leaving me the paid-off house and modest savings of $180,000. I had 2 daughters, Patricia, a pediatric nurse who always helped others before herself, working at the Children's Hospital, and Sarah, quieter but married to dependable Mike, who seemed steady and hardworking. But 10 years ago, everything shattered. Patricia was found dead in her apartment bathroom at 28. I'll never forget that phone call. It was Sarah who called me, her voice breaking as she told me the news. The police said Patricia had slipped getting out of the shower and hit her head on the marble tile she'd been so proud of installing. "Such a tragic accident," the officer had said, his voice kind but matter-of-fact. "These things happen more often than you'd think." I couldn't function for weeks. Grief blurred everything together. Sarah became my lifeline, handling everything I couldn't manage, staying overnight when nightmares kept me awake, holding me when sobs came out of nowhere while folding Patricia's clothes. "Mom, Patricia would want us to be strong," she'd whisper, stroking my hair like I used to do when she was small. "She'd want us to take care of each other now." For 10 years after, she played the perfect daughter, visiting twice weekly with fresh flowers from her garden, always yellow roses. She'd arrive with groceries I somehow always needed, helping with medicine bottles and loose cabinet handles. Mike started coming too, spending hours on yard work and minor repairs, always refusing payment with that charming smile. During holidays, we'd look through Patricia's photos together. Sarah's grief seemed so genuine. I never suspected they were studying my routines, learning my vulnerabilities while they waited. The warning signs started 6 months ago during one of our regular Sunday dinners. I always cooked Patricia's favorite meal on the anniversary of her death, pot roast with honey-glazed carrots and homemade biscuits. As we sat around my oak dining table, the same one where I'd served countless family meals over the decades, I shared something that had been weighing on my heart for months. "I've been thinking about my will," I said, carefully cutting into the apple pie I'd baked that morning. "I want to leave most of my estate to St. Mary's Children's Home. You know how Patricia always volunteered there during nursing school? She used to say those orphan children needed advocates, people who'd fight for them when no one else would." The silence that fell was so complete I could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Sarah's fork froze halfway to her mouth, a piece of glazed carrot balanced precariously on the tines. Mike's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and he set down his water glass with deliberate control. Sarah carefully suggested I should keep the money for my own care as I got older, mentioning assisted living and medical treatments. I laughed, gesturing at my sturdy frame, explaining that Dr. Peterson said I had the blood pressure of a woman 20 years younger. Besides, it's what Patricia would have wanted. She always said we should help those who have nothing when we have more than we need. Something cold and calculating flickered across Sarah's features before she caught herself, arranging her expression back into loving concern. Mike wasn't as skilled at hiding his feelings. His construction worker's hands trembled as he reached for more biscuits, insisting that family should come first. That comment haunted me for weeks. In the following weeks, they increased their pressure with a campaign that felt increasingly coordinated. Sarah would casually mention articles she'd read about how expensive medical care was becoming, how unpredictable life could be at my age. Assisted living costs $8,000 a month, she'd mention while organizing my medicines. Mike constantly brought up horror stories about outdated estate documents, always claiming he'd heard them from his foreman or coworkers. "You know, Margaret, these things change all the time. Tax laws, inheritance rules. Estate lawyers say it's important to review these documents every few years." He'd lean back in Robert's old recliner as he said this, looking so sincere and helpful. Maybe we should schedule an appointment with that lawyer who handled Robert's will? Just to make sure everything's current and legal. I felt increasingly pressured, but I also wanted to finalize my charitable donations properly. The meeting was scheduled for the Monday after their planned farewell picnic. In hindsight, the timing was no coincidence. That's when they invited me to a farewell summer picnic at Riverside Falls, claiming they wanted to celebrate family before autumn arrived. "Just the three of us celebrating family," Sarah said, eyes bright with enthusiasm that now seems demonic. "We can visit the waterfalls you used to take Patricia and me to as kids." The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. They chose our happiest memories as the backdrop for murder. Sarah and Mike showed up early that Saturday morning with picnic gear and suspiciously new hiking boots that looked like they'd never touched dirt. Sarah wore a bright yellow sundress, the exact same shade Patricia used to love. Mike carried an overstuffed backpack that bulged at the seams. "What on earth do you have in there?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Safety equipment and emergency supplies," he replied quickly. "You know, first aid kit, rope, flares, compass. Can't be too careful in the wilderness, especially with someone your age." The way he said, "someone your age," made something twist in my stomach, but I pushed the feeling aside. The 40-minute drive to Riverside Falls passed in nervous chatter from Sarah about everything except what really mattered. She talked about her friend's new haircut, a movie she'd seen, the weather forecast for the week ahead, anything to fill the oppressive silence. Mike drove with unusual care, stopping completely at every sign, using his turn signals religiously, checking his mirrors constantly. "You're driving like you're taking your road test," I joked, but he didn't laugh. "Just want to keep my precious cargo safe," he said, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror with an expression I couldn't read. At Riverside Falls, the trail was harder than I remembered. My 63-year-old legs struggled. Each time I stopped for breath, Sarah hovered anxiously, asking if I was okay. "I want to see the falls once more," I gasped. Patricia loved this place. Again, that flicker in Sarah's eyes at her sister's name. We reached the overlook where cascading water crashed onto jagged rocks 60 feet below. Under other circumstances, it would have been beautiful. "Let's eat by those rocks near the edge," Mike suggested, pointing to a spot that made my heart race. As we unpacked, I noticed their positioning, Sarah on my left, Mike on my right, both blocking my path to the main trail. I was trapped at the cliff's edge. At the cliff's edge, I overheard their whispered plan. Mike urged it was now or never, before Monday's lawyer appointment. Sarah worried I might scream, but Mike assured her they'd make it look like I'd slipped while photographing the falls. Then Sarah whispered something that made my blood freeze, just like Patricia. My mind raced with horrible possibilities about what really happened to Patricia, but Mike tried to silence her before she could reveal more. I felt Mike move behind me. Instead of running, I threw myself forward at an angle toward the water. I'd noticed a deep pool below the main cascade during our hike up. My thick jacket and hiking boots would drag me down, but the current might carry me away from the rocks if I could reach that deeper section. The fall seemed endless. I hit the freezing water with brutal force, the impact driving all air from my lungs. The shock of the cold water made my muscles seize, and my waterlogged clothes pulled me under. But the current was stronger than I'd expected, sweeping me downstream toward a fallen log where overhanging branches provided cover. Above, I heard their conversation confirming my apparent death. Sarah called out, asking if I was dead. Mike replied that the current had carried me downstream and no one could survive that fall. They discussed calling 911 to report I'd wanted photos and slipped while getting too close to the edge. But then I heard the full truth about Patricia. Sarah explained with chilling detachment how Patricia had discovered their systematic theft from my accounts over months. When Patricia confronted them that night, threatening to expose everything, Mike had pushed her in anger. The impact was fatal. They moved her body to the bathroom, carefully staging the slip-and-fall accident that police never questioned. Sarah spoke about murdering her own sister as casually as discussing the weather. That was what horrified me most. She admitted Patricia was going to take away their inheritance, just like I was trying to do with my estate plans. They wouldn't let that happen again. They thought I was dead. That became my advantage. I stayed hidden, shivering and bleeding until their car left. Then I crawled 2 miles to a ranger station, collapsing on the doorstep. "My daughter tried to murder me," I gasped to the ranger, "and she killed my other daughter 10 years ago." Detective Williams listened to my story with growing amazement. "If they believe you're dead, we can use that. Let them file missing person reports while we investigate Patricia's case." Sarah and Mike reported me missing that evening, giving tearful interviews about trying desperately to save me. Sarah's performance was flawless for the cameras, sobbing about how I'd wanted the perfect photo to honor Patricia's memory. That night, they appeared on local TV, faces damp under studio lights, retelling a tidy story about the photo I supposedly wanted so badly. Neighbors posted prayers and hearts. From a thin hospital blanket, I learned how far a lie can travel while the truth is still gathering its paperwork. Grief performs on camera, evidence does not. Meanwhile, Detective Williams reopened Patricia's case. "The impact angle never made sense for a bathroom fall," she told me from my hospital bed. "And there were dry areas where water should have been if she'd just showered." Detectives tugged at small threads: a receipt for brand new hiking boots, Sarah's texts about Monday at the lawyer deleted an hour after the fall, Mike's phone ping near Patricia's street the week she died, a dry patch on a bathroom tile where water should have pooled. Each detail clicked into place like teeth on a zipper I could finally close. But before I tell you what that neighbor heard, I need to know. Are you ready for a truth that will make you question every family dinner you've ever had? Hit subscribe if you can handle more stories like this, because Margaret's tale is just the beginning. Within a week, they had enough evidence. Old bank records showed systematic theft. Cell tower data placed them at Patricia's apartment that night. A neighbor remembered hearing arguing. When police arrested them, Sarah's mask finally cracked. Seeing me alive in the interview room, she screamed hysterically. She insisted I was supposed to be dead, that she'd watched me fall. I simply said her name, and her carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. 3 months later, the trial began and lasted another 3 months. Financial records, witness testimony, and the confession I'd overheard sealed their fate. Sarah tried blaming Mike. Mike testified that killing Patricia had been Sarah's idea. Both received life sentences without parole. When the heavy door closed behind them, the room did not cheer. Justice wasn't triumph. It was breath returning to a chest pressed down too long. I updated my papers. The children's home, not my family, would carry my name forward. It felt less like revenge and more like alignment. Some doors close softly and still end a life. Now I sit in my cottage surrounded by Patricia's photos, understanding the truth. Patricia died protecting me from thieves who shared my blood. Sarah lived as a lie for 10 years, planning my death. The children's home will receive my estate as planned. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are those we've loved longest. But sometimes love means having courage to seek justice, even when it breaks your heart forever.